All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Wednesday, January 22nd. This is your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns right here on All In Horns. I'm Tanner Carlson. That is Jake Jimerson. We welcome you back as as football season kind of wrapped up. We had a weird little schedule going on. We're back on our Tuesday through Friday, releasing at noon, and then we will also release an episode. Instead of doing an immediate reaction to a football game, we will be releasing these episodes on Saturday at noon as well. So 5 days a week, Tuesday through Saturday, these episodes dropping at noon, unless there is a big basketball game, whether that's on the women's side. There won't be any big basketball games on the men's side, so we don't really have to worry about that. But say baseball has a big game, we may do an immediate reaction to that, but we'll just keep everybody updated up to that point. We've got a great show for you today, following our immediate reaction to the national championship game and kind of where college football was and putting a bow on the college football season on yesterday's episode. We didn't really get a chance to talk about Steve Sarkisian and declining 2 NFL interviews. Supposedly one of those were reported to be the Dallas Cowboys head coach. That remains to be actually verified, but we'll see. Looking at his extension through 2031, adding a year on to his previous extension from last year, and then also general manager Brandon Harris also getting a bag as well. And then women's basketball, we'll give a quick update on what they did against Auburn, but last night absolutely demolishing Maryland. We'll talk about that as well. And Amari Niblack transferring to Texas A&M. And then we're going to take a look at what the Texas offense for 2025 looks like, following all the draftees, following the transfer portal. The transfer portal is not completely done yet. We still have the spring portal coming up. Doesn't look
like
have
Notre Dame and Ohio State as well.
Have Notre Dame and Ohio State as well. And so once those transfers are all kind of through the portal, everyone's decided where they're going to go. But for now, this is what the 2025 offense is going to look like. Jake, how are we doing?
Finally, I think to the point of recovery from the loss to Ohio State. It's taken a while to get here.
Yeah.
A different kind of recovery. It's not pure depression. It's just more of being sad, but still having the excitement, but just being sad because you feel like Texas lost, a very good chance at a national title. But finally recovered and really now just feeling the excitement of spring football could be starting right now, as far as I'm concerned. I'm sure the players don't want that. They need a break. They deserve a break. But if I could do the Adam Sandler movie, get a little click remote and just fast forward right now, especially since I'm in my busy season and that would get me past it, I would very much so take advantage of that opportunity.
Yeah, Jake, I typically going through a bit of a, recovery phase of football season where it's like, all right, I'm kind of cool on sports. Like I don't need to watch it every single night. Like it is kind of what it is. I'm already back I kind of skipped that recovery phase and went straight into depression phase that football's done essentially. Now we still have the NFC, AFC championships at the NFL level. We still have the Super Bowl. Also, that made me depressed also as a Cowboys fan. This couldn't be the worst possible. There couldn't be a worst possible scenario out there as Chiefs, Eagles, Commanders. Our only hope for a percentage of happiness for the NFL season, especially following what the Cowboys did in the regular season this year in the NFL. Our only sliver is Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. But again,
help me, Josh Allen. You're my only hope.
You're our only hope. Getting into that post-football season depression this early is a good thing for my recovery from how the Texas season ended, because then I'll be looking forward to the draft, be looking into NIL deals and offseason and then spring trading, and looking forward to how Manning looks with the offense with CJ Baxter coming back and some of these freshman wide receivers and a guy like Ryan Wingo, who we're going to be super excited about, very excited about where the offensive line is going to be. And so that's kind of what we're going to actually look into this episode.
Yeah. And you know me, I'm excited to talk about the offensive line, especially with some of it being a little more unsure going into this next season. Honestly, makes it a little bit more fun for me just because I've watched these guys closely in spring games. I've watched them closely when they've gotten their time on the field. And a couple of these guys I've been really excited about for a couple of years now. And now we're going to finally see that actually take place on the field on Saturdays. And how, even though they haven't I'll go on a little spiel about, even though how they haven't played in games together, there might be a little more continuity there than a lot of people think.
No, I think so too, Jake, and that's exactly what we're going to go into. But first things first, Sark gets a extension of a 7-year extension. He's adding a year onto last year's extension already because he made the Final Four again in back-to-back seasons with a significant raise, is all I've heard, from his $10.3 million deal that was set going into this year. So I don't think those numbers have been released, have they? And not from anything that I've read. And so declining 2 NFL head coaching interviews, Jake, showing his commitment to this program. Chris Del Conte, I think, kind of rewarding that loyalty from Sark by giving him this extension, by giving him this raise, but also the production that he's put on the field, the product that he's produced within this football program as well. He kind of deserves another extension and deserves another raise.
Yeah. First off, ESPN is a propaganda news network. I get a notification when that happens on my phone. ESPN, Sark leverages NFL interest into long-term extension. First off, it literally added 1 year. It's just a pay raise. And not only, we'll get into this more so, I think, tomorrow, but it's not just a pay raise for him. I think part of the significant part of the raise is more so going to be him getting more money for his staff and being able to retain staff. I know that was allegedly a very big part of this. Again, we don't know for sure. None of the numbers have been reported, but just from reading what people who are privy to this information have said, is that this was also about getting more money to be able to get a Brandon Harris to stay. Be able to give him almost, I think, double what his salary was, to make sure that someone like that stays. That was key in not only getting the number 1 recruiting class, but doing an incredible job of retention. One of the best jobs of retention you could see in this portal and NIL era, which is very important to winning a national championship. Just ask Ohio State. Who was able to do a very good job in retention this past year, and then bring in some guys through the portal as well. So it's not just about Sark. It's also about keeping continuity as best as possible with the staff, which, again, we'll get into that more tomorrow.
But yeah, Jake, I think you're 100% right. I mean, obviously there's murmurs of poaching within the Texas Longhorn coaching staff, really not just Steve Sarkisian, but the interest from the NFL, I think, is an interesting conversation piece, Jake. We discussed it earlier, but I think Sark declining interviews really shows his loyalty to his team, to the players that he's recruiting, to the promises that he's made, and then to this Texas Longhorn program. We've talked about it over and over and over again. You and I have of he's kind of built this thing and he's just got it started. We're at the very dawn of what this Texas program is going to look like under his tenure. Why would you pick up and leave that no matter what the situation in the NFL is, especially going to quite possibly a bad NFL team that needs a lot of rebuilding? And rebuilding in the NFL is not like rebuilding at college, especially at the University of Texas.
No, rebuilding in the NFL for a head coach is nothing like it is in college, because you have very little control over that. You have to be, on the same level with the general manager. You have to be able to make sure that you're going to have a say. There's so much more that goes into that. And head coaches will get the torch a lot of the times in the NFL. And by get the torch, I mean burned up.
The hot seat.
Not the torch being passed to them in a good way. In a bad way, they'll get the hot seat because their roster's just bad. You look at the Carolina Panthers, who just recycled coaches every single year for about 3 years, when no one was going to win with that roster. And so I have said, I think Sark will eventually go to the NFL. I think he for sure wants to win at least one national title at Texas before doing so. And this year, we said it before, even when there was, talks of him maybe being interested, we both said we didn't think it would happen this year. Cause like you said, the timing makes no sense. He just rebuilt this. He has put so much work. I don't even want to know the hours per week he has spent to rebuild this into what it is.
The stress on his personal life. I mean, not that we know any details about him and the first lady of Texas, but obviously they're doing fine now. But I mean, there were some possible strains in his personal life that I'm sure
There was a divorce post. I mean, that was public.
They made that public post as a couple together. They're doing fine now. They're back together. It seems like they're happy, but there is a lot of time and hours away from personal things that you need to sacrifice. And he's not going to sacrifice all of that just to say, yeah, let me go to the NFL.
Yeah. And with Arch Manning coming, I mean, just none of it timing wise makes sense. I think there's going to be a point where timing wise, it'll make sense for Sark. And yes, there'll be some of the fan base that at that time calls him a traitor or whatever. But I think a lot of people, for the most part, when that timing happens, it will be a thank you for what you did. And I hope you succeed there. I really wish you stayed though. It'll be more like that than like if he left right now, even I would be melting down being like, you just built this. Why would you leave us now?
Yeah. Well, I think that the fans that would call him a traitor are the ones that are calling for his job during the Ohio State game.
It's the ones saying to fire him. And, or that one of my favorite ones, it was on the message board Geniuses X account, which is a great follow because you get to see all the fan base's stupid boards because every fan base has them, Sark needs to fire himself as play caller and hire Cliff Kingsbury, which was pretty funny to me just because what has he done other than this year at Washington, which is more of a Jaden Daniels thing than a Cliff Kingsbury thing. I'm not saying Cliff Kingsbury's a bad offensive mind, but he's not any better of a play caller than Sark. I don't think he is better.
Again, the timing for Cliff Kingsbury to accept, it takes two people to make a job work. Like you have to have the person who's interested and would accept the job. And then you also have to have the people who are hiring you be interested in that as well. I don't think first of all, in that scenario, neither party would be interested in bringing him in. I don't think Cliff Kingsbury would be interested in coming in to be a head or to be an offensive coordinator under Sark when he just took the Washington Commanders to an NFC title game. That makes no sense. And
I don't think
he has a rookie quarterback
to college.
No, I think he wants to be in the pros. There's a reason why he went to the NFL and stayed in the NFL even after he got fired. He took a year off and didn't coach anywhere.
Yeah. The time commitment is more in college than it is in the NFL, unquestionably. Yeah. Cliff has no interest in doing that,
he seems to be kind of he seems to be exceeding as the offensive coordinator more than he was as a head coach.
Yeah, I think being an offensive coordinator in the NFL is kind of the perfect position for him. And I don't think he has interest in being in college. And quite frankly, why would you, if you're being sought after in the NFL and you're already in the NFL, why would you at this point with how college is want to go there where you're going to work around the clock? You're going to travel nonstop. Cliff likes the luxury lifestyle, as we saw with his draft picture when he was at Arizona. But that was just one fan posting that out there. But it's interesting to talk about it because there has been talk of should Sark give up play calling. It's been a long time since a play caller won a national championship, which I don't put any credence into that because Nick Saban and Kirby Smart were winning all the national titles. Little different world of college football that we're living in now compared to even just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and Brandon Harris also getting an extension and basically doubling his salary as the Texas Longhorn general manager. That's going to make him one of the highest paid college football front office officials in the country. Details have not been released, but what is the significance in his role? Because a lot of people may not know what Brandon Harris does and why this is a significant extension.
Yeah, and even I just go based off what I read from people that I trust, that I know are well ingrained into the program and have good sources, because the general manager is pretty vague and there's not much talk about it. But what general managers do, to my understanding, is they deal with a lot of the NIL stuff, A, and then B, they deal with a lot of recruiting and a lot of retention. And those have been two, and Sark is very heavily involved in this, but clearly he's on the same page as Harris. And this is where that NFL relationship actually kind of shows up. If you're going to have a general manager in college, your head coach and him need to be on the same page, and both need to be putting in tremendous amounts of effort. And obviously it's been working. This relationship has been working because Texas is crushing it in recruiting, and they're crushing it in retention. Even after in retention, you're going to lose guys to the NFL. I saw some people, why can't get Cam Williams to stay? Well, when you're getting scouts telling you're going to go in the first round, there's no talking a player into staying, nor should they stay if they're going to get to be a first round pick. But retention to me is not losing your key guys that are for sure, don't have the option to go pro, which is an Anthony Hill, a Colin Simmons, a Ryan Wingo, an Arch Manning, even though that story's a little different there.
Trey Moore, Manny Muhammad, who are on the ropes of being in the transfer portal.
Trey Wisner, DeAndre Moore, the list, all these offensive linemen that they've juggled for 3 years, that knew they were going to have to wait a while to start.
Cole Hudson.
Neto. Now I'm going to try on the last name again.
Yeah. He'll be known as Neto.
Yeah. We're just calling him Neto because I know, even though I know how to say it, I will say it wrong.
Yeah.
I can know how to say it in my brain, but not out loud.
There is a pronunciation chart on the Texas Longhorn website that I've gone to and practiced. Again, naturally, it doesn't flow out quite yet. So,
no.
But anyway, yes, Jake, to your point, my understanding of it as well is that he is kind of I'm dealing with the contracts of NIL. I'm dealing with agents. I'm dealing with all the things that Sark doesn't need to be dealing with because he's got to put into a game plan, a scheme, and, an offense for this team, whether that be going into the offseason, whether that be what it is. He's also on the recruiting trail, traveling a lot. So Sark has already too much on his plate. It's kind of an extra hand for Sark, for him to work side by side and getting kind of all the behind the scenes of, like you said, NIL deals and things like that done for coaches and players, not just for the players. And so, like you said, it's been some of the best in the country, whether that be retaining your coaching staff for 4 or 5 straight seasons now, keeping your position coaches, or keeping guys from going into the transfer portal that could go and get very enticed by probably higher paying NIL deals, but you've got to match something along the lines. You can't say, hey, Oregon's offering me $2.5 million, but you're getting $500K here. You're going to have to bump that $500K to maybe $1.5 million, to where they're like, okay, I'll stay for $1 million less because I like it here and I feel like we can win here. We got something special here and I don't have to learn a whole new system, but you can't keep it at this $500K level because I'm definitely going to walk if I'm getting it up here.
Yeah, which is happening, by the way. From every report I've read, Texas is absolutely getting hometown discounts from players that are getting offered through agents and through schools going to those agents, ridiculous offers that Texas could not match because they would crash their NIL system if they matched on all these guys. And we're talking key guys, right? The guys that people would want to tamper with, whether it be a Wingo, a Simmons, a Hill,
Arch Manning.
An Arch Manning for sure. All these different guys, a lot of the offensive linemen, but some of these big name guys, teams just throwing crazy numbers out at them and still choosing to stay at Texas and not being like, you need to match the offer. Just being like, I want to stay here, but I at least need to be like higher than I was this year because of my performance. And some fans may not like that, but if you're a 19-year-old kid and you really want to stay at a college, but you're going to make $500,000 or $200,000 compared to getting offered $4 million for 1 year, just put yourself in those shoes, because that is a huge difference. But if you're going to make $1 million as opposed to 3, but you're going to be where you really want to be, that to me says a lot about where this Texas program is, even though a lot of fans may not like the sound of that because it's so much money being discussed in this kind of new age of that. To me, it still says a lot about how much these kids really do love being at Texas and how much they love the staff to be turning down potentially hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars more to go somewhere else that would also probably be a top level program.
And speaking of transfers, Amari Niblack, tight end for the Texas Longhorns, is transferring. His second transfer within his collegiate career. Was originally committed to Alabama, then transferred to Texas this last year. Didn't really get on the field, didn't see a whole lot of production, maybe a couple catches. I didn't look at his final stats.
I think he had 4 catches on the year.
Okay. And just never was you and I very excited about him coming in. Thought maybe, hey, this guy's going to be the number one guy, but couldn't beat out Gunnar Helm, couldn't even beat out Juan Davis, was kind of sitting third, even maybe flirting with fourth on that depth chart. And so he has decided to transfer and move his talents to College Station, where he will compete for playing time at Texas A&M. I don't think he's a shoe-in starter at Texas A&M, quite frankly. And so you got to learn that. You got to learn a system, and you got to block in that running system, because they're going to have Le'Veon Moss coming in and being one of the leading rushers for that team, especially with the Marcel Reed. You're going to have an option offense that you're going to have to try to block for. And Amari Niblack just couldn't cut it in that department within the Texas Longhorn system. And so I don't know. It'll be an interesting fit for sure. But that's where he's going. We'll see him next year.
Yeah, I think he probably thought he was going to be the shoe-in starter this next season at Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think probably when he had his meeting with the offensive staff and Sarkisian, it was like, you're going to have to beat out Jordan Washington, who I know that the Texas staff is very high on. And he probably just thought he's going to be the shoe-in starter. I'm not saying he's going to start at A&M, but I imagine he was probably promised at least significant playing time to do that, because I think that's why he transferred out, was because he wasn't I guarantee he was not guaranteed playing time, because I know this staff is really excited about Washington, and he's a guy that I think is probably going to start this next season.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And I'm also excited about Spencer Shannon as well. I think that he's got an opportunity. 6'7" freshman last year, will going to be a redshirt sophomore coming into this year. Excited about just his measurables and what this coaching staff, after having about 2 years now of offseason growth, kind of see where Spencer Shannon is. And then, like you said, Jordan Washington. And then you've got a big-time freshman coming in as well at the tight end position who's looking to compete in Nick Townsend. But, Jake, let's take a look at what this 2025 offense is going to look like real quick. I'm just going to run down names and years. I think really emphasizing how young this offense is going to be crucial. But obviously, starting quarterback, Arch Manning, redshirt sophomore. CJ Baxter, medical redshirt sophomore. Running back, Trey Wisner will be a true junior. Tight end, Jordan Washington, a sophomore. DeAndre Moore, junior. Ryan Wingo at wide receiver, sophomore. And then you've got Khalid Lockett, Jamie French, Michael Terry, all freshmen at wide receiver positions. Left tackle, Trevor Gooseby at redshirt sophomore. Nato, a junior. Cole Hudson maybe at senior. I'm interested to see what they're going to do, but this is just what I have listed. Cole Hudson, senior center, possibly moving him to the middle of the offensive line. DJ Campbell coming back as a senior is absolutely huge, but the only returning starter on that offensive line. And then Brandon Baker, the sophomore at right tackle.
Yeah, much different offense. They are
completely different.
They are losing a lot of production. I know there's a lot of excitement. I know Texas being talked about being ranked number 1 in a lot of these way too early polls, which is kind of crazy.
They're way too early for a reason.
Yes, a lot of that's driven behind the Arch Manning hype, and I am hyped for Arch Manning. But everything for this team, to me, is going to start with how this offensive line steps in and plays. I say that every year, but I think it's pretty obvious this year. And I think most people would probably agree with that because a bad offensive line is going to make Arch Manning struggle, especially early in the season. And you're replacing 4 out of 5 starters, essentially, which is wild. I mean, you have Cole Hudson
on that offensive line. And then really, if you look at the entire offense, Jake, you're looking at, it's CJ Baxter was hurt, so you're not really replacing a starter. You're just gaining an old starter back. But let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 8, 9 starters on the offense.
I think the official count was 8, but you can kind of argue 9 depending how you look at wide receiver position.
Right.
After how the depth chart was released against Ohio State.
But 8, you're replacing 8 starters on your entire offense from a season ago.
Now, granted, it's all extremely talented blue chip NFL prospects that are stepping in.
And here's the thing too, Jake. Sorry, I don't mean to keep cutting you off, but here's the thing too is that they've already been in this system for the last 2 seasons, learning this system as freshman, redshirt, sophomore, whatever, going into it. They've been in the system under Sark getting developed for the last 2 seasons.
And now I guess that more so bridges to exactly what I was about to say. But yeah, you did kind of cut me off to say what I was going to say. But
My
no,
bad.
that's what I was going to say with this offensive line, right? To me, one of the big things is I know they've been cross training Cole Hudson, but is he ready to step in and play in games at center? Because that's a big change. You know, I again, I didn't play it anywhere near the level of Texas, but I played on every position of the offensive line but center. I tried it for a few practices, and I went up to my coach and was like, never, never. I will play left tackle, left guard, right tackle. I'll go out and play tight end. Do not put me at center.
Yeah.
And so, because it's just so different, adding that snap in and the footwork, everything changes. I imagine they're confident in him. If that's already been the talk and they've been cross training him, they know what he looks like. But other places, DJ Campbell's, I guarantee, gotten plenty of practice reps with Brandon Baker because Hudson and Campbell were switching out at guard all year. And then on the left side of the line, Neto and Gooseby, they've been practicing together. And Neto is someone that I have been saying he might start every single year, thinking he would take over Hayden Connor's job. Little did I know Hayden Connor just actually somehow in his final season became a different animal.
Yeah.
Maybe
a late round draft pick.
Yeah. And maybe a very serviceable starter in the NFL, by the way.
Yeah.
And
give him a couple years.
So I'm very high on Neto. I think he is going to step in. I think this offensive line is going to be a much better run blocking unit. I think adding in a Cole Hudson at center adds size and strength compared to Jake Majors, who I loved, but in run blocking wasn't a strength. Hayden Connor wasn't a strength in run blocking. Neto has long been considered one of the best run blocking linemen within this program. It's going to be where his pass blocking is at. That's going to determine if he has a great season or just a good season. DJ Campbell, very good run blocker. Another year of development. This guy is going to be an All-American caliber.
He'll be a first. He'll probably be a first round pick next year.
Yeah, if he's not a first round pick, it's only because he's an interior guy.
Yeah,
he was a beast this year. Just penalties and the occasional pass pro mistake would frustrate fans, but that's just the life of an offensive lineman. You only notice them whenever they do something bad. Yeah, you have 60 snaps and you have 59 great snaps, but one snap was given up a sack, and that's all the fan base remembers of an offensive lineman. And then Brandon Baker is probably the biggest question mark. He saw very limited time this year. He's a 5-star guy, very talented. I've heard he has that workhorse mentality like a Banks, but we've seen very little of him. I think he stepped in, and I think it was the SEC title game. Cam Williams went down for a little while. Baker came in for a handful of snaps and
that may have been
fine.
Was that Clemson or SEC? That may have been the SEC title game.
That may have been Clemson, actually.
Yeah,
I think that was Clemson.
And then we've obviously seen those guys play a little bit. Colorado State, UL Monroe, UTSA, but it's so hard to determine whether or not they're.
To me, the 5 snaps against Clemson means more than 20 snaps against Colorado State.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
It's a bigger position, and he stepped in, and I don't think he played very many plays, but while he was out there, I didn't go, oh my God, what's happening at right tackle? So well, that to me will be the biggest area. I wouldn't be surprised if they bring in an experienced guy to compete and just bolster the depth in the spring portal. But I will say I do expect this group to be a better run blocking unit. It's pass pro where we're going to really figure out how good this offensive line can be because pass pro is a lot of communication. It's a lot of getting used to just the exotic blitzes that coordinators bring at you in a game. And that's going to be, to me, the biggest adjustment for a lot of these guys.
And Jake, I know Sark doesn't necessarily like design running offenses, and he's not ever going to have some option first, style offense, but with Arch Manning's ability to run with 2 running backs that are going to be very, very viable options, Sark always has a good running offensive scheme. It's just not always through the quarterback. But if your offensive line also good through the running scheme, this offense may look a little bit different in terms of a zone or power run scheme with CJ Baxter and Trey Wisner, along with the Jarrett Gibson in the mix and an Arch Manning, who all have the capability of running the ball. And if your offensive line's strength is to run block, then that might be where this offense is headed at least for next season until we get that. It's never going to be run the ball 40 times, throw the ball 20 times. It's never going to be 2-to-1 running in Sark's system. But I'm just saying that might be a direction where I wouldn't be surprised if we come out and see a more run-heavy offensive scheme next season.
Yeah, I think Wisner might actually become more of that secondary to third option again next year. If a Baxter comes out healthy, I think another year for Gibson is going to be huge. I think Gibson's running style fits Sark's scheme better than Wisner's does. I think Baxter fits it better. Also look out for freshman James Simon, a name I'm hearing that could get some playing time next year that they're very high on. We'll see how he looks in spring. And I believe he's in for spring. But just another name that, but and then like you said, to me with the Arch, I do think he's going to run Arch some. I mean, he has when he's been in. He came in and UTSA and immediately ran him. I will say, I think he will be very selective when he does that. I think we will see more of those looks in bigger games. He will save that because you want to limit his hits.
You're never going to, you're not going to run him 10, 15 times against UTSA or UTEP.
But it does open up a lot for this whole roster, having Arch with the ability to run it. If the pass pro is not as good, I will say, like, if this offensive line and it was Quinn Ewers at quarterback, I'd be a little more worried just because Quinn, that's not his strength, is making guys miss, moving in the pocket and getting out of the pocket.
Really? Oh,
Arch, that is going to be something Arch is good at. He had to do it a lot in high school. He's fat. I mean, he is fast. He was one of the fastest players on that long scramble he had against USTA and so, or UTSA. And so I think this offense is going to be very dynamic. I'm curious to see how they start the year. I think by the end of the year, it may be a better offense than we had this season. In fact, I think it probably will be.
It's possible.
I think they could struggle early, though, especially that first game at Ohio State. That is a brutal first start.
You're going to have to learn how to play with each other, and that's perfectly fine. Some other notable names, Jake, Parker Livingstone. He's like a 6'6", just fast, deep field threat, big body guy. He's going to be exciting. He might be kind of a guy that might be what we thought going into this year. We kind of overlooked guys like DeAndre Moore, who ended up playing a bigger role on this offense than maybe we thought. I think Livingstone, I'm going to keep my ears peeled for Livingstone throughout spring training and things like of that nature to see where he fits in this offense. Cause I could see him now that he has a year or two in this system where he steps up over one of these 5-star wide receivers that's coming in.
He got clocked at, like, I think they said 23 miles per hour in a practice.
He's
insanely 6'4", 200.
He's got a huge body, huge frame, and he's fast as hell. So also another guy, Jake, that we're not mentioning, athlete Ryan Niblett. Where does he fit in? They obviously want to use him. He's good enough to be used. Do they flip him on the other side of the ball? They want to use Niblett somewhere. He's an athlete. Get him the ball somehow, some way. It's just, where does he fit in? He obviously hasn't transferred, and so he likes where he's at. He feels like he can provide something to this team, and so I'm interested to see where they're going to do what they're going to do with Ryan Niblett, and then like I said with the tight ends, Spencer Shannon or Nick Townsend. Those will be interesting names to kind of keep an eye out on.
Why I'll say this right now, way too early season prediction. The wide receiver production is going to be at a different level next year, just yardage wise. Quinn was more of a tight ends, running backs, and
check
then
down.
One wide receiver have a big game. I think there'll be several games where they have two wide receivers go over 100 yards with Arch. I think DeAndre Moore is going to have a gigantic year. Wingo is going to have a gigantic year. And then I expect one of these other guys we've named or a freshman to have a breakout season. And then you're probably going to have a handful of other guys that have big games. They do not lack for talent at wide receiver. And we already saw how Arch is more of a going to the wide receivers and tight ends, less to the running backs, sometimes to a fault. But I think we're going to see a lot of big plays next year. And I think wide receiver numbers are going to spike heavily.
Well, let's wrap up the episode, Jake. Texas Longhorns women's basketball dominating in the Coretta Scott King Classic. It's a SEC Big Ten sort of a thing. But Texas beats Maryland, number 7. Dominates Maryland, number 8 in the country, 89-51. That's their second straight win after losing a terrible one against South Carolina just a week ago. But taking down Auburn handedly, now taking down Maryland handedly. Just doing what Coach Vic Schaefer does best, and that's rebound after losses and gets his team right. And Madison Booker, I think, had an absolute just dominating performance. 28 points, was 13 of 19 from the field. And she just kind of took over this game, and Texas never really looked back from the very tip-off of the game.
Largest lead for Texas was 40. Largest lead for Maryland was 0.
Yeah, they never had the lead.
And Maryland only had one other loss this season, a close loss to a very good USC team. This is an impressive performance. And I think the team was a little upset after that South Carolina performance and wanted to show better. I mean, forcing Maryland to 27 turnovers while only turning over 11 times. Also, just to compare to the men's basketball team, they had 20 assists in this game.
And I love that.
More than the men's team gets, I think, probably in all of SEC play combined.
Yeah, and at least 2 or 3 games as combined for sure. All right, Jake, that's going to do it for today's episode. Again, back on a Tuesday through Saturday schedule, dropping at noon. Like, share, subscribe to the channel. We appreciate the support. We love the support. Give us content ideas. Send in questions, and we can have this conversation. We can have a mailbag episode as well. And so, Jake, that's going to do it for everybody's daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns right here on All in Horns, and where all podcasts can be listened to. You're watching us on YouTube as well. For Jake Dimerson, I'm Tanner Carlson, and as always, ladies and gentlemen, welcome.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.